Home Cooking Kitchen, we're gonna look at making your own butter. It's easy, it's simple, it's economical, and it really only requires 2 ingredients, even 1 if you don't want it salted. So if you wanna be able to do this, take this beautiful French loaf. Yes, we're gonna show you how to make this. Yummy crust on the outside, and take some of your fresh butter and put on there and serve that to your family. I assure you, you're gonna love this episode. See you in a little bit. Making butter at home is really super easy and it's fun. And you can control your foods. You know, we kind of talk about the dependence on prepared foods already, and making what you can at home that's easy is always a good choice. This only takes just a few minutes, and it requires 2 ingredients. Actually, only 1 if you don't want it salted. So today we're going to look at making some butter in our food processor, and it doesn't matter which food processor that you're using as long as it's a food processor. It will not work as well if you try to do it with a mixer, like with a paddle or a whisk. It needs to have that heavy cut of the food processor. You could do this in a blender, but remember, blenders are for thinner liquids that are gonna go up, and we really want this to go horizontally and mix quickly. So we have a 1.5 cups of heavy cream or whipping cream. And now you can use any amount. If you can only get a pint, use a pint. If you only need a little, this does not have a recipe per se, just proportions. So today we're gonna use a 1.5 cups of whipping cream. And I'm gonna salt this butter just to have salted butter. Now you can flavor it with a lot of things, and we'll go into that in a minute. The salt that we're going to use is a flaked sea salt. And the reason I like to use this in this particular recipe is that it's a small flaked salt, so it'll soak into and be absorbed by that cream a lot easier. You won't get that grainy texture that you might get with regular table salt. And the flavor of sea salt is recognizably nicer. I use it a lot, especially in most of my baking and cooking dishes. I will have some information on salts in another episode. Be sure and watch that, because salt is more important than you think, and not all salts are alike. So back to our butter. So here I'm using a Cuisinart 14-quart food processor. Now you don't need something this big. You can do it with whatever food processor you have at home. You're gonna say, well, can I do it without one? You can do it without one, but you'd better have a strong right arm. You could try to do it in your KitchenAid mixer and really press on it with a whisk, but it's not gonna be the same. So we recommend this. We're going to start off by adding this 1.5 cups into our Cuisinart. And remember, it's not recipe sensitive as far as amounts. You can make this in any amount that you want. The more you put in here, it's just the longer it's gonna process. And I'm gonna add a teaspoon for this 1.5 cups of this sea salt. And I'm just gonna sprinkle this in here. Now, again, you don't have to add salt. You can have unsalted butter and salt it yourself later. So we're going to secure this lid. Now, on this, I just turn it on and just let it go. And you're gonna think this is never gonna turn into butter. Well, it will, and it'll do it very quick after it gets out of that whipped cream looking stage. We've gotten about maybe a minute or 2, and I want you to see that this is what I'm talking about, that it looks like it's in the whipped cream stage. This is what it looks like when you're making that delicious whipped cream to put on your delicious goods. But we have to push it beyond that so that it can make butter. How many of you have made whipped cream that turned out to be a little buttery than you intended? So We're gonna keep this on, and now we're gonna start watching this. And as it continues to whip, you're gonna hear the motor change its speed, and you're gonna see this start to kind of lump up a little bit. So we gotta keep a good eye on this. You don't want to walk away while this is happening. And the time is really, you're looking at it, because it depends on how fast your motor is, how big this is, how much you used, etc. So those things, this is really a visual thing. So we're looking through here. Now we're starting to get, let me show you this next little stage. Now we're starting to get a little bit of a yellow color. That's the beginning of it starting to go to butter. It is not going to turn as yellow as prepared butters are. Those actually have food colorings in them sometimes to make them look more yellow. But it will start to yellow just a little bit, and you can see it starting to kind of glob up a little bit. We want to push it just a little bit further. Now, some of it's coming up on the side, and I want to push that down. So I'm going to get a spatula and press that down, get that off of the sides a little bit. You can hear that motor change just a little bit. And now let's take a look at this, and then I'll push that down off the sides. You can see now we've got a liquid in the bottom, and we're starting to get little lumps. That's where we're getting butter. So the butter is starting to come across, the butter fats in this are starting to solidify, and that liquid we're gonna strain out. And you can do that with a strainer or some cheesecloth, and then we're gonna press it. But right now, I'm gonna grab a spatula, my all-time favorites. I love these small ones, and we're just gonna push this down onto the side. Okay, so let's get this finished up. We're waiting for that to really start to look like a dough almost, where you can see that lump going around on the outside. And there's your butter. Very simple. So we're going to take this out and we're going to place it, making a little bit of a mess here. And you're going to place it over some cheesecloth or a strainer. Now, you can go either way. You can do it this way and let that drain out, just let it sit over it, or you can actually open up this and use this cheesecloth and kind of squeeze it. Either one is fine. It won't make any difference. You just want to get it to where it's solid. So we're going to take this. This is, let me get a different one of these. Okay, so now we're going to strain off that liquid. I'm just going to remove my blade because I don't want that in there. I'm going to pour this over this strainer so that that comes out, and I'm left with just the solids. Now, don't press on this like we might with other products, trying to get all the moisture out, because what will happen is that butter is a little bit soft from the whirring of those blades, causing quite a bit of temperature friction. And so we don't want to squish it through there, or else we'll get butter coming through it. And we want all of our buttery goodness. So you can take this and just leave it here and let it drain. And that'll come out. You see we have a little lump, and all of that's draining. But one of the fun things to do, and the way I like to do it, is sort of like cheese making. It's sort of the same thing, isn't it? A little bit. Is we're just going to open up some cheesecloth. And we're going to cut just a little bit off. Now, cheesecloth is, you can find it at any store. It's generally over where the canning goods are, and it's handy to keep around. Get off of there. Okay, so now all we're gonna do is just take this cheesecloth, and we're just make sure that it's at least double thickness, I would think. You know, you don't want it to be too thin. Let's do it like this. I'm gonna place this over here. I'm just gonna flip it upside down. And then we're just gonna take this cheesecloth and just kind of give our butter a little extra squeeze. See that liquid that's coming out of there? We really don't want that in our butter. We want that butter to have as little liquid as possible. So we're gonna get it out. And when I start to feel the butter pressing through, then we've probably had enough of that. So we're gonna put this in Tupperware, or you can put it into a bowl. You can put it into anything you like. It won't last very long. Now you see that cup and a half has made probably a half a cup of butter. So a half a cup of butter is about the equivalent of a stick. So we're gonna place this in here, and you can see it's all nice. We're gonna get this off here. You know, there's no point in wasting. Don't be wasteful. Get that little bit off of there. And then I'll just put this back in here. Now, this butter you can put in the refrigerator. You can leave it at room temperature so that you can spread it easier. And you can also add honeys to this to make honey butter. You can add a little bit of chives or garlic if you want to add a little bit more of a flavor, like you're doing some Italian bread and you're gonna toast that off. Make some of this, put in a little bit of roasted garlic and pour it around. It'll make delicious. Add a little bit of honey to it. You can make honey butter for your delicious rolls or your waffles. This butter is as good as it gets, and that took us, what, 5 minutes? So you can do this. Have the kids do it. It's fun and it's tasty.